And welcome to another jam-packed edition of the MuniciPALS. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Philip.
And I'm
Today, of
Josh
course, we are
Matlow.
joined. It's Josh Matlow. He beat me to the introduction. I was gonna
Sorry.
get to him. No. It's even better. Josh Matlow, current city councillor and mayoral candidate. Welcome to the MuniciPALS, Josh.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Uh, you know, we are blessed to have you here. I gotta ask, we had Anthony Perusa on, what was it, a couple weeks ago,
2 weeks
and
ago, yeah.
and right afterwards he put it up on Twitter. He challenged all the city councilors to come on here, and I'm just wondering if you spoke to him about us. It's okay if you didn't.
I honestly I haven't spoken to him in many weeks. But Philip was the one who invited me on. I was really happy to take you up on it.
Absolutely. Philip,
Listen, they've all been too busy campaigning. They haven't been able to talk to each other. Of course, that's on top of Anthony's mind
I
next
didn't
time he
expect
gets
him
to
to
see
vote for
Josh.
me. So,
why don't we get started with some questions? Phil, go ahead.
I do have a set of questions that I want to ask you, but I still would like to start wherever we normally start with all our candidates, which is if you just like to give us maybe what you think is the top three sort of issues facing the city right now that you would like to resolve. Uh, Matlow, go ahead.
I mean, there are many issues that are important to people, but if you were to sort of put it into general themes, I hear from people across our city that affordability, in particular housing affordability, is just it's just out of control. Whether it be rent, just rent really is just not affordable for most people anymore, and it's getting worse, especially since Doug Ford removed rent control. And just the dream of home ownership, it's not in the cards for most people now, so they don't even think that that's ever going to be a reality. And it's really sad that that is what our city is like these days, and we need to work on that. Safety, whether it be just feeling more vulnerable when riding the TTC, and some people are actually choosing not to ride the TTC because they just don't feel comfortable anymore. Along with road safety, there's a number of different issues when it comes to safety, including supporting youth at risk who feel often safe in their own neighborhoods, and then just livability, meaning services, like just the basic services that we rely on have just been allowed to decline because we've had leaders who have not been upfront about what it takes to pay for them, what it takes to improve them, and have created a culture at City Hall that essentially asks city managers to manage and put out fires, and tell us that everything's fine with the very little that we give them to succeed on, rather than reach for something further than the height of mediocrity. So we need to do a lot better.
So what's great is, Josh, is you've accidentally stumbled upon a great launching pad for what my question is going to be. And the basis of the question does come from, I want to give a shout out to Jenny Warden. She was a candidate for Ward 19, came second place. She's great. And it touches down with an issue with trust and integrity at City Hall. Yeah. And it's something that a lot of people, and I feel like really trust in government in general is a huge issue.
Yeah.
And especially like you've been dinged from maybe
Dinged is one way to put it. Yeah.
That's definitely the way to phrase it. For speaking out against city staff, my understanding of the situation is they essentially were giving out a report that was inaccurate, if I'm understanding the situation. Around, and I mean, in my mind, it was a big election issue, the last municipal election, the parks not being opened on time, and city staff giving kind of the opposite information from the reality. So of course, Josh, you speak up against that, or rather, not that you did, and you got in trouble for it. How do we tackle this culture of, how do you make City Hall an institution that we can trust? if that makes sense.
And therefore actually care to vote and get involved because you think that it might do something honest and real. I get it. There's a reason why a lot of people don't vote. They just don't, they don't see the benefit. They're not convinced that it'll help anything. And I want people to actually believe in it again. And it's got to come from a culture change, both at the staff level and also at the political level, meaning city staff need to be empowered to not only just, as I said, like put out fires and manage and never ask for more, even if they know that they need to do better, but come to us and speak truth to power and say, we have a vision for how to make things a lot better, and this is what we need, and we need you to debate whether or not you're going to invest in what we need to succeed, but we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell you if it's going to break if you don't do that. That's what I want, and that's certainly the guidance that I'm going to be providing as mayor. And at the political level, I just there are too many decisions that are based on whatever the political motivations are rather than actually what the evidence guides us toward. And I also, have you noticed that every press conference that politicians in most cases hold are just to tell you how awesome everything is, what a great job they're doing, and why you should vote for them. And I just think that we need to also sometimes hold a press conference and say, we can do a lot better. Here are our problems. We actually need to engage you in this discussion, because if we don't, we're not going to improve the situation. Or we screwed up and we need to improve on it. But I believe that I've done well in my local elections, largely because even people who will come to me and say, I like a lot of what you've done, but I disagree with you on some things, trust that I arrived at my conclusion honestly, that I didn't just do it because a lobbyist told me to, or the mayor sent me a cheat sheet to vote on, or all that kind of stuff, but that they believe that I genuinely arrived there. And they've also seen even my views on various subjects evolve over the years, like normal human beings do if you're thoughtful. So I just think that's how you build an accountability, where you're just really transparent and accountable about what you're doing and why you're doing it, rather than just spin or manipulate or just tell people what they want to hear.
Josh, I wanted to tell you something. I hope you take it as a compliment, because
Okay.
I really mean it as a compliment.
I'm getting ready for this.
I know that you lived through the Rob Ford years. I got to be honest with you, I'm a big Rob Ford fan. And before he became mayor, he was kind of like the lone wolf. And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be the kind of the role that you're filling now, the lone wolf. And now this is your chance to be mayor, and I'm very excited for you, and I hope it works out. Not really a question. I just wanted to say that, and I hope you take that as a compliment, because I certainly meant it as it.
Well, no, listen, I appreciate certainly the spirit in which you mean it. I can't say that I was as big a fan of Rob Ford as you might be, just because I just had such strong disagreements with so many things that he did and how he did it.
You lived it. You lived through it.
I did, yes. And you're triggering something now. It was a pretty crazy experience. That being said, though, I mean, I perhaps I'm perceived like that by some because I don't just sort of do whatever I'm told so that I can get the plum committee appointment or that kind of stuff. I just don't live that way. I know it's harder in politics, but I feel better about it, about how I conduct myself in that way. That being said, though, a lot of it's overblown. I actually get along with a lot of people at City Hall. I have friendships. I work. All the accomplishments that I can tell you about. I didn't do it alone. Like, I worked with, whether it be colleagues at council or excuse me, community leaders to advance what we care about, whether it be advocacy for seniors, the Toronto Senior Strategy, or the Youth Equity Strategy, or the youth spaces, or protection for renters. Like, the list goes long, and you didn't invite me on here to do that, but I just mean, I didn't do all that as a lone wolf. Like, I really did collaborate with people to achieve those.
I understand that. And now I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
all this is like a large theme of this election is the deficit, the budget. So
Yeah.
what steps will you take to address the budget, both in revenue tools and also finding efficiencies?
First of all, I mean, thank you for the premise of your question, that you're recognizing that we need to do all of it. And anyone who says otherwise is just not being realistic, because just to contextualize it for your viewers and listeners, we have roughly a $1.5 billion shortfall that is, temporarily being covered up by raiding the reserves, which is irresponsible. And it is projected that we're going to have a $46 billion shortfall over the next decade, which means that we are in serious trouble unless we actually address it, and rather than just kind of pretend that everything's fine. So I'm going to do everything from, and as I said from the get-go of this election, I am going to raise property taxes over the rate of inflation. We have to. I know you're not supposed to say that during an election, but it is reality.
It's honest. I like it.
Well, I mean, yeah, and you know what? Everyone's going to have to do it. If we're really going to be honest, because our city's broke, we're going to have to. I'd rather just level with people. That's what I'm going to do. And I put out an example that 2%, even just 2% above, is really $67 for the average homeowner, right? That comes down to $5.55 per month, which is a fraction of the price of having a Netflix subscription. We can all pitch in, invest in improving our services and making sure that we take care of each other. That's what I want for Toronto, because we all deserve it. We deserve a city that works. I also know that we need to look at other revenue tools, whether it be a corporate a commercial parking lot levy, which could bring in between 170 to between 500 and 600 million dollars per year, which staff project. We need to look at what we call efficiencies, whether it be, I think the city spends far too much on consultants fees when we should be doing more in-house. The plans for the gardener now are just bonkers. And just to be clear, there's this misinformation, sometimes deliberate, out there, that we're having a debate about whether or not we're going to knock down the gardener. That's not happening. Most of the gardener is not in question. And the section that I'm referring to, which will most likely end up being east of Cherry to the Dawn, there's no debate over whether it's going to come down. It is coming down. It's either going to be brought down or it's going to fall down on people. So it has to come down. No one is actually arguing otherwise. The question is, will it be elevated like they used to do in the 1950s, or on the ground? I believe we need to do it on the ground. We'll save between $500 and $600 million. We'll ensure that we don't stick, the next generation with annual life cycle maintenance costs that are really high for elevated expressways. We'll open up 5.4 acres of land for housing, and we'll still connect the DVP to the rest of the gardener. And the reality is we're broke, so we have to make decisions, even if they're difficult. And I'm going to be using those savings toward actual priorities. Do you realize that that's 34% of the entire capital budget sucked up, where we're not repairing roads in every local neighborhood? We need to spend that money on housing. We need to spend that money on reversing the cuts to the TTC, which was another stupid decision. So there are things that we need to just get our own house in order. While I admit to you, no mayoral candidate has answered the question about how to actually address the full budget pressure, because that will take a new financial and governance framework arrangement with the other levels of government, which I have a strategy to achieve. But it's not going to be like what Anna Byelection suggested, for example, which is Doug Ford, just out of the goodness of his heart, uploading the DVP in the garden. He just told us 2 weeks ago he's not going to do that. So I'd rather live in the real world and actually deal with reality.
And what about the sorry, Phil, I'll give you the next question. What about the single biggest line item in the city budget, the police budget? What do we do to rein that under control?
We rein it under control.
Great answer. That's that's all we need. Just acknowledge that it needs to be reined in. That's all we want.
And not just the police budget. I really do believe that we need to start looking at stabilizing the inflationary costs and then investing those funds into more proactive ways to address community safety. There's been more and more money put toward that $1.16 billion budget. And yes, the police should be supported to do what police should do. But even like rank and file police officers will tell you, they tell me, that they're not public health nurses. They're not youth workers. They're not mental health crisis responders. They're not outreach workers. We need to invest in our communities. We need to make sure that youth have real options, whether it be support for trauma counseling, homework help, employment training, and actual opportunities, youth spaces. On the TTC, for example, rather than spend money that we don't have on having police just arbitrarily standing around just in case something might happen, we should be expanding our, a rapid response with mental health crisis responders who have the training and knowledge to identify individuals who might have the potential of violence and de-escalate them and actually prevent a tragedy from occurring in the first place. Working with transit control. There are things that we can do to approach community safety that doesn't always involve police.
Well, interestingly enough, sorry, Phil, I got to take this one because you brought it up. I read, I can't remember where it was in the paper or something, that the TTC actually had it in their capital budget, the barriers, which are going to start at Young Bloor Station. And I'm just wondering, it came out of nowhere like it was a big secret. And I'm just wondering if you can offer any insight on that.
Not at all. It was just announced the other day, and that's great. Again, I think that we need to have a discussion about their budget. Hello over there. Discussion about their budget, because what I like, listen, I think the screens are a great idea. That being said, they cost roughly $10 million a station. We've got over 60 stations. We've got to, be real about this. This comes right at a time when the former mayor and the TTC supported cutting the TTC because they said that they didn't have enough money for the basics, and then hiked the fares. So all of a sudden, magically, we've got all these millions of dollars. I mean, that's, if magic works, that's great. I don't believe that's the way you address budgets. I would begin now on reversing the cuts, because I at a debate recently, I used this example, like if a restaurant, gave you crappy service and then hiked the price of their menu, would you go there, right? And the TTC had the same experience. The fares went up, the service went down, became less reliable, less safe, less affordable, at a time when we're trying to incentivize riders back onto the TTC, which also will help address congestion and improve our environment and help people's lives. So that's my first priority. I also will be investing in expanding transit, such as the Eglinton East LRT up to Malvern, extending Shepherd to Nielsen. But I'm showing how I'm going to pay for that too. It's not going to be the approach that that I've advocated against over many years. And ultimately, if we are to move on screens, I also think we also need to weigh priorities such as where's the budget to ensure that every subway station is genuinely and fully accessible to people with disabilities, which has been ignored. I guess in short form, I'll say, I don't know how that announcement happened. I'm curious to find out more. And certainly as mayor, I'm going to be setting priorities that are based on the budget we have and the focuses that have been unmet thus far.
Phil, go ahead.
All right. A few thoughts. I'm going to start with the fact that I told you when I met you last Sunday that I appreciated that you are willing to sort of say out loud things that weren't very politically, I don't know, nice to say out loud. And I appreciate you right now calling out the whole, I don't want to specifically call out Anna Byelection, but it's very strange that she continues to say in her campaigning that she's going to go to the province about the Gardner and the DVP, when Doug Ford has definitively stated that's not happening. So, I mean, that's just ridiculous. But to jump back to where we were talking about with the police and the mental health kind of pilot, City Council, it feels like City Council moves very slowly and very often will either defer things to do more research, do more studies, or very limited pilot programs.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if there's a way that the city can sort of, how do we make the city move faster in a way that's not, I don't want to say dangerous. I feel like the pace in which
Yeah.
the city tries these new things is glacial.
You know, like, just not to get into the hyperbole about it, but just like really, like, if you deal with it thoughtfully, there are things that don't need to take a million years and be done in this like really timid way. And there are other things that really do need some consideration because you don't want to do something that doesn't make sense or isn't helpful. So it all depends on what we're talking about, right? Like, for example, if you're, I don't know, if you're doing a plan for a neighborhood where you really want to be holistic about, both housing, but also childcare and um, uh, school capacity and parks, you want to do it well. And you want to make sure that you get to the right place. And it needs to be an iterative process between developers and communities and do it right. It doesn't mean that every project needs to be that way. Some are just no-brainers. But if you want to do things well and you want to get the engineering right, you need to consider if something's going to stand up or not. There are other things like when I was proposing that we just allow responsible adults to have a drink together in a park, or I just think it's like, why do we need pilots to find out if like somebody can have a drink with each other? Like it just, I don't know.
Gosh, you trust Torontonians to be responsible? Who are you, our father?
Quite the
damn,
opposite.
Josh.
I don't know if my father would have trusted me to do that, but honestly, like, because it's like, it's not like we're inventing a wheel. Like every other city, like major cities in the world, like this is normal. Chaos has not reigned. Anarchy didn't prevail. Like, and even like the things that people worry about, like, oh my gosh, what if somebody gets drunk and acts badly? Well, that's already happening. Like, I'm not condoning that behavior. And if somebody acts drunk and disorderly, there are laws about that. If people are littering, that's a problem. If people are, peeing in the bush, they shouldn't do that. But that's an existing problem because that's about behavior. But the average person, if we just allowed it to be a legal thing, isn't all of a sudden going to lose their head and go, oh my God, I'm going to like go and start a riot. Like, come on, they're going to just have a beer with a friend on a bench or have a picnic with a glass of wine, like they do in cities around the world, and everybody's happy. Now, I see other things that we can do, like streets, cities around the world have like animated streets and street performers and a really like vibrant, scene on their waterfronts, for example. Here, there's like this laborious thing that you got to go through where you get a permit and you've got to pay like over $40. And why do we make things difficult when it comes to just having a little more fun, having vibrant animated spaces? Cafe TO, for example, like it took a pandemic literally to get the city to finally reimagine how we use our streets, support businesses, and have that really cool, sexy cafe life that they do and like they do in other places in the world. And now that the pandemic is waning, oh, hey, let's make it really difficult again. Like that's almost like the default position. We don't need to do that anymore. And so the approach that I'll be taking as our mayor is that if something actually needs a little more time to be thought out, of course, you don't rush something and then break it. But if there are things that just don't, if the case is thoughtfulness, then we'll take it a little slower. But if the issue is timidity, no more of that. Like, let's actually just do things that we know are right and helpful and get on with things. So, but not in a sort of a strong mayor of action, break through a wall and don't care if I destroy something way. Like, it's got to be done well.
I do like the image of Josh, the Kool-Aid Man mayor.
That's awesome. Great image.
Now, so also just as an aside, most of the time when we do these interviews, the questions I ask are based on kind of what the interview has talked about. Now, Josh, specifically with you, I did plan ahead only because as one of the higher polling candidates, you do have more opportunities at debates and other sort of things to get your platform out. So I thought it was more important to kind of maybe ask about maybe what's not necessarily key things. So like this question I have, you know, in 2018, after the province in our great wisdom elected Doug Ford as premier, he did a very fun thing to Toronto City Council. He cut it in half
I
just for
remember.
fun. Just
Yeah.
you know, a grand old time. Really, we really love that for him.
Yeah, I
And
really enjoyed that too.
understandably, we have big problems to deal with in 2023 in the city of Toronto. You know, restoring city council to its original size maybe isn't top of mind for both voters and candidates. You know, it's not something that's been brought up. But I'm curious if there is any sort of thought about if that's something worth looking into, something worth chasing, something not even worth thinking about while Doug Ford is still premier. Do you have any thoughts on the council size?
I mean, my thoughts are reflective of my position consistently. I think it was a big mistake, um, and it was done without any real consideration for the consequences. It was done as sort of a political statement, or some people think it was just like getting back at council, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know his motivation, and it's impossible to get into his head in that way. But um, it didn't like even if you cut council in half, it doesn't mean that the workload gets cut in half, and it just means that there's less opportunity for councillors to get into the depth of those relationships on the ground, working with communities on the issues that are really important to them, spend time to actually understand the issues, and the oversight, like sitting in the committees and actually, you know, you hear about reading reports and it, you know, it might make your eyeballs roll, but it means actually understanding if, like when I was on audit committee, for example, understanding if there's been fraudulent behavior, understanding how to improve services and make things work better. Like you want that oversight, you want that accountability, and councillors do work on that. And he Doug Ford framed it as, well, you've got one MP and one MPP, so why can't you just have one councillor for the same riding? And the reality is that their jobs are different if you actually understand them. Like councillors, MPs and MPPs don't get called to, like, you know, get right into the weeds into like local community issues, and councillors do, and for good reason, because that's what we want our local representatives to do. We want them to understand our communities in a real way. So I think that was a mistake, and if there's a way to correct that, I would support that. But it's not the only thing. Like I when I refer to a financial and governance framework that will work for Toronto, I believe we need to work with other municipalities. We can't do it alone, in my view, just because uh, the other levels of government, you know, if they support Toronto, they'll be considering, well, but what about another city? Or we want to win votes in that other riding? Or what if we look like we like Toronto too much? Or um, it's important to understand what other big cities in Ontario and across Canada are experiencing when it comes to new arrangements for transit operating, social housing, courts, you name it. And we need to work together to negotiate more successfully with Queen's Park and Ottawa on a number of priorities where they can be of assistance. But ultimately, my approach with Doug Ford to achieve that is not going to be the go along, get along approach that my predecessor had. I think you need to go into every negotiation from a position of strength with a bully, because if you don't, he's going to roll you over. And as you alluded to, that's what he's done every single time. And our city is more broke, and we have less power. Strong mayor, but a weak Toronto. And that's not acceptable.
Absolutely. You know, I'm just aware of our time. Phil, I'll give you the last question. I just got a couple of quick ones for you. It's funny. I'm just wondering if you, well, this has nothing to do with the election.
Yeah.
Recommendation for a restaurant in your riding. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Oh my gosh. So many.
I bet you didn't know you were going to get that one.
Yeah. You know, there are so many. For some reason, like the first one that comes to mind is Albert's Real Jamaican.
Really?
And, yeah, seriously. And by the way, it doesn't mean that, I just want to be really clear. It doesn't mean that it's my only favorite. I think it's because I'm hungry and his jerk chicken is extraordinary. Uh, so I just, anyway, that's where my mind went. But honestly, there are so many, like the Zezafoon that at Manor and Young, which is an amazing Syrian restaurant. I mean, we're very fortunate, not only in the area that I represent, but across our city, to have like such a diversity of different foods. And you know, like Scarborough, I reminded everybody of this recently. Scarborough got written up in the New York Times recently for having like some of the most extraordinary and a diverse array of different restaurants anywhere you can find.
I didn't know that.
Even more than patties. They've got great patties and Patty King. But just truth be told, that's not the only Scarborough cuisine. It's true.
That's awesome. And then
I mean,
Phil and I are.
If you ask Brad Bradford, I think that would be the only Scarborough cuisine he'd know.
There is more. There's more. Baboos, like there's more. There's many.
Phil and I are wondering if you're planning a party, I guess, for election night.
Yes,
That's
of course.
Awesome. Hopefully we make the cut.
I would love you to come by. But I must say, like I mentioned this to my team the other day. I am very aware that we have a lot of work to do over the next 3 weeks. I'm very grateful that I'm consistently leading the polls within the top three. Olivia, admittedly, very far ahead, and then Mark Saunders and I sort of going up and down between second and third. And I feel grateful that we're there. But I do see natural ceilings for the other two candidates, and I believe that the public really does understand that I don't have some big party machine supporting me. I don't have Doug Ford supporting me. I don't have like some of the other candidates, like literally like Nick Cavalis or Ontario Proud or any of these people involved in my campaigns. I'm running a campaign that is like genuinely focused on our priorities, and I'm excited about the victory party. And then I know that like literally the day afterward, I'm going to be addressing some significant challenges given the financial situation that we're in and all the many priorities that have been unmet and under-resourced. And my job will be to, in a really honest, upfront way, engage Torontonians on providing these solutions that I'm putting forward in my platform. And I'm really happy to see even some of the other candidates enjoy many items on my platform. So it's good.
I just got one more quick question then, Phil. I'm going to turn it over to you. Would you keep Jennifer McKelvey as your deputy manager? Just a yes or no.
Mayor, you mean?
Sorry?
You mean deputy mayor?
That's what I mean. Sorry, deputy mayor. I apologize.
I'm gonna be upfront about not being upfront about this one, only because I have disagreements with her, but I really do appreciate the fact that when John Tory resigned in a very unexpected way, even if I've got disagreements with her, she has stepped up and served in a very, I think in a competent way. I've had disagreements with what she's done even as deputy mayor, but I don't want to spend this time kind of deriding her in any way, because I think she has earned that respect. I can tell you I'm going to replace the speaker in a heartbeat.
Fair.
Does it have to be a fellow councillor to be the speaker?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, damn it. Okay. You can't just.
What, were you hoping to do
call me up?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be fun.
I think he'd be great. He actually bring a lot of entertainment to the meetings.
If you wait until 2026 and I get my, well, actually,
it might be before that.
Maybe it might be before then. I've the last municipal election I ran in Scarborough Southwest. I did very poorly.
But Gary Crawford might be running provincially, so you have your chance again. And I, of course, will be
me, baby.
I, of course, will be running against Vincent Crisanti.
I think the residents of Etobicoke North would be well served by somebody other than Vince Crisanti. Nice guy, by the way. Nice guy, just not always. I'm not always impressed by his voting record.
I agree. Phil, why don't you take the last question and then we'll wrap this up.
Now, so I was glad that you had brought up the Cafe TO, because of course we've been hearing in the last couple of days sort of that it's been a mess. This new fee-based and the application seems like they're not being touched yet. It's like a very slow process versus what was going on during the pandemic. Now, my question to you actually isn't about Cafe TO, bureaucratic hurdles, but it's but specifically something you had said, the keyword being fun. Toronto, at the moment, it feels like Toronto sort of has this image, and I don't think it's entirely the city's fault. I mean, we just went through a pandemic for the last 3 years, and everything's sort of been shuttered and hard, and everyone's sort of, gotten into a shell of themselves. Maybe I'm projecting right now. But what would a Mayor Matlow do to make the city vibrant, to attract tourism back, to get us going, to make Toronto fun, to make Toronto like Montreal without the French?
I'm happy to have some French here too.
Josh, I need a strong anti-French candidate right now. I'm joking, please. You can parlez-vous all you want.
Mon ami. Pas du tout. I actually think we could learn a lot from the French when it comes to the patio culture, and certainly from the mayor of France when it comes to a multimodal city. But I think, to answer your question, I really believe that our city can be far more vibrant. I'd like to see more pedestrianized areas. I'd like to see street life, street performances. I'm going to be making significant investments into arts and culture. I'm going to be, upping the per capita that we invest into the community. I'm going to be putting more of a portion of the hotel tax toward the arts throughout our city, in every corner of our city. But I also believe that by improving services, fundamentally creates a base to be able to then go to companies like tech companies that might otherwise set up in warm weather climates like Houston or Miami, or out in California, and say, this is a great place to set up shop. This is where your employees will want to live because we've got this amazing city that people want to come to. And ultimately, if we allow people, I know the drinking in parks thing for some people are like, that's not a big deal, but it's just, I think it symbolizes just the ability for people to enjoy the city in a way. I remember, speaking of Paris, and not to say that we're going to completely emulate it, and and however you feel about the French language, I like it, you don't. But
some of the best cafes are outdoor cafes are in Europe. Yes. So,
but I remember, they've got this festival, this wine festival called Beaujolais, and during that time, people not only in a park, people walk these beautiful streets with a glass of wine and celebrate and have fun. And you know what? Everyone's happy. There's no riots. It's okay. Grown-ups enjoy each other and have fun, and there's music, and people will sit at cafes, and and the street is vibrant and animated. That's what we want Toronto to be. And so I want to support our arts and culture communities. I want people to know that we're going to be creative about how we design our city. And ultimately, I want people around the world to look to Toronto and say, oh my gosh, can you believe what they're doing over there? Isn't that amazing? I want us to get out of that insecure culture that we have, often in Canada, where we're always like, did somebody in the States talk about us? Or can't we be like somewhere else? I want somewhere else to look at us and go, oh my gosh, Toronto is amazing. They're a leader to combat the climate crisis. They're a leader in designing their cities. They're not allowing, crappy contracts like Astral to leave us with this Tonka toy plastic garbage bins that break all the time. They're not just designing squares like Dundas that are the best concrete can give you. I want people to see Toronto as something special, because I see it as something special, but we're not meeting our potential, and I want to drive that. I want to get going.
That's amazing. Speaking of which, Josh, how many years left are we on that contract for those garbage bins?
I'm blanking, but it's soon. It's really soon. It's within, I think.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah.
I was thinking another 20 years.
2 or 3 years. I think we have an opportunity to.
Oh, amazing.
To do something a lot better. And I would actually submit, bring it in-house so we actually have control over it. And by the way, on that
We'll
note,
bring it back public.
I have an engagement that I've got to start running to.
And you know what? I was just about to send you off.
Thank
I
you.
apologize. We kept you a little bit
No,
longer
I
than we
enjoyed it. I
normally
enjoyed
do.
it.
Josh, very glad to have you here. It's been great to talk to you. I was very happy to meet you last week. You are
Me too.
a stand-up guy. I'm really excited for your candidacy.
Thank you.
Josh, if you'd like to leave us with a few last words before you go, we'd really appreciate that.
And thank you so much for joining us.
My delight. No, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you. I'd love to come back, by the way. Like this has been a lot of fun. And you know, my I guess remaining message here is I obviously hope people will vote for me. I really will work hard in a genuine, honest way to improve our quality of life and make the city work. My website is sorry, that was my other one. My election website is votematlow.ca. Please check it out and then read the details of what I'm proposing with exactly how I'm going to pay for them. But the most important message I can convey is, regardless of who you vote for, please vote. We started this conversation about how few people do go and vote and get engaged. This is your city, right? We're the ones who want to work for you and represent you, but this is your city. And this is your opportunity to define the future of our city. So please go and vote. It takes minutes. Just go in there and vote. It's a great experience, and I would encourage everyone to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Have a good night.
All right.
Thank you both.